So earlier today, Packers GM Brian Gutekunst had a press conference and he spoke about the upcoming draft, which is now, surprisingly, only 3 days away. 3 days till we find out who the Packers select in round one and, of course, the entirety of the draft. But Gutekunst spoke with media earlier today and shared lots of differing thoughts about this draft, the prospects, things like that. And I do wonder, how much you can really take from this press conference, because he does share some insights into, what he's looking for, what the Packers are looking for when they make these picks. But at the same time, these GMs around the NFL, they don't want opposing teams, other GMs to know what they're going to do. But first off here, we'll start with Ryan Wood, who said this. Packers GM Brian Gutekunst says his draft board is pretty set at this point. 3 days before he's on the clock in the first round. Really, through this past weekend, we got pretty comfortable with where it's at. So the Packers already seem to have the rank of their players, sort of how they rank these different guys. And watching a podcast earlier this offseason with a Packers scout on Kurt Benkert's podcast, this scout was talking about the Packers they sort of pick the best player available. It's not really based on need, even though you'd assume that's in the back of their mind, considering, how many players they have or what biggest needs they have. They really do go best player available. So it really comes down to that draft board when they're sitting at their spot. Who do they think? It sort of determines who they think is the best prospect still on the board. And so it sounds like the Packers already have everything pretty situated there. And I think one of the things to question is, when you get into the draft, are there spots where the Packers are willing to trade up to potentially snag a guy that they like and they think that, they'd be willing to trade away some other draft capital for. Then we have here from Wes Hodquist saying Brian Gutekunst on the Packers league high 11 draft picks. Says he's open to getting even more. Gutekunst said, quote, "We have 11 right now. I'd love to end up with 13, 14 or more. I'd never shy away from that." So Gutekunst is always willing to trade back a little bit to secure some more draft capital, which he did last year in the second round. He traded back, I think it was like three picks or 3 spots for the first trade, then 3 more spots after drafting Luke Musgrave, trades back, gets Jaden Reed, and then also with those picks that they acquired through moving back about 6 spots, they got Dontavian Wicks and Carl Brooks, I believe. So clearly at times it makes sense to trade back, and Gutekunst talked about this in this press conference that you sort of have to gauge and be comfortable with your draft board enough to trade back, because some of the guys that you like may no longer be there if you do trade back. And he spoke about that here from Ryan Wood. Wood says, if Jaden Reed was drafted after Packers traded back in second round last year, Brian Gutekunst said he was comfortable drafting Tucker Kraft in second. Important to feel good with multiple options when trading back. Quote, "You have to be careful falling in love with individual players." So if Jaden Reed had been gone, the Packers would have been fine with taking Tucker Kraft. And so the fact that they got Kraft in round 3 shows that they were clearly satisfied with that value they got, because they seem to have a second round grade on Tucker Kraft. So they got Reed and Kraft, and then also acquired those additional picks, and I think it was round 5 or so. And so Gutekunst sounds like he wants to get more and more draft capital so they could trade back at some point in this upcoming draft. Then here we have from Ryan Wood, Brian Gutekunst unsubscribing to idea more draft picks are better. With more at-bats, you have more chances for hits. Packers hold 11 picks this week. Gutekunst says he won't shy away from another big class. Quote, or more, he said. More competitive we can make it, the better. So that sort of goes along those same lines. Then here from Wes Hodquist, Gutekunst on Andre Dillard. First round pick coming out, very talented. We've lost some offensive line depth the last couple months. It's a chance to bring in another guy to compete in that room. And the Packers did decide to sign Andre Dillard in this past week. I didn't cover it. I didn't make any videos on, I think, Thursday or Friday, and that's when this happened. And so if we look at Andre Dillard coming here to Green Bay, he was a first-round pick back in 2019, but he did struggle in a big way last season, which is why the Titans, after giving him a 3-year deal, decided to let him go. He allowed 12 sacks in 562 offensive snaps. He did spend 3 years in Philadelphia before that, and he had some good seasons during that stretch. And so the Packers getting some more depth on the offensive line, and hopefully the Packers can develop him and get him back to that form he had a little bit earlier in his career. And then here from Wes Hodquist, Gutekunst said signing Greg Joseph was all about competition. Anders Carlson had a promising rookie season. Gutekunst also says Cooper DeJean could play corner or safety, just depends on where you may need him. Praised his athleticism. So the Packers signed veteran kicker Greg Joseph to bring in alongside Anders Carlson. Greg Joseph was not that much better than Anders Carlson last season. So now the Packers have some competition there, which is good. I think with the way Anders Carlson played last season, that was pretty important for the Packers to at least get someone else in there, because I don't think that you could go through the entire training camp regular season with just Anders Carlson, because if he continues to play as he did last season, I don't think he's going to be the starter here in Green Bay for long. But hopefully he can take those strides forward and get back to playing well as he did early last season. Then from Zach Cruz, also on DeJean, Brian Gutekunst on Cooper DeJean playing corner or safety. We think he can do both. He's very versatile that way. He's a very well-rounded player. So Cooper DeJean, who has been mocked to the Packers a ton, cornerback/safety. Not sure if he'll be available when the Packers pick at 25. And it's really hard to know when Gutekunst quotes or has something to say about specific players, because he could just be saying it to say it. Maybe he likes DeJean, maybe he doesn't like DeJean. It's just hard to read into everything he says here, because you don't know. He wouldn't give you information that he wants to keep to himself to be able to have some advantages in this draft. So that's why I take everything here with a grain of salt from what Gutekunst is saying. Then here from Matt Schneidman, Brian Gutekunst on Jair Alexander coming to voluntary work this year after not doing so last year. Quote, he's really excited to get back at it. He seems to be in a great space right now. And I think that's a good sign when you see some of these players who necessarily don't have to show up to these voluntary workouts showing up. I think it's a good sign. Then here from Ryan Wood, Brian Gutekunst says he wants to continue being interchangeable at safety. I think when you have two guys who can do everything, I think it'll allow Jeff Hafley to be much more efficient. And that's, one thing we've seen from Gutekunst during his time here in Green Bay back since 2018. He always wants to find guys who are versatile at every position, whether that's offensive line, whether that's cornerback, safety. When you find those guys who can play multiple spots, it does make it easier when there are injuries. If you have a tackle who can also play guard, you can flip those guys around. It just gives you some more flexibility. And so I think it makes sense. Among any team around the NFL, you want to find guys who have the ability to do that just in case you need it. Then here from Ryan Wood, Brian Gutekunst says picks on first 2 days are hard to come by. He's got 5 in first 3 rounds. An idea that could help him move back into first round. Quote, to use one of those picks to move up, it better be for one of those players you don't feel like you're going to get most years. And so that's a question with the Packers sitting at number 25 in the first round. Is there someone out there they're willing to trade up for? Maybe if a guy drops who they didn't see dropping, maybe they drop into the late teens, the Packers could use either one of their 2 second-round picks, one of their 2 third-round picks to move up to potentially grab that guy. That is a nice thing about having those picks, that if you really do love a guy that much, you have that flexibility to do so. Or at the same time, you could even move back a little bit in round 1, which I'm not sure the Packers will do that. But they do have a ton of flexibility with these 5 picks in the first 3 rounds. And we saw back in the draft when the Packers got Christian Watson, they traded, when they had 2 second-round picks, they traded one of them to move up. Basically gave away another second-round pick to acquire Christian Watson. And so when there's a guy they love, they're willing to trade up and trade those valuable picks. And so I'm curious to see if that happens come draft day. That'll show the Packers love whoever that is, which gives me some excitement. Because, typically, I think Gutekunst is a very good GM. He makes very wise decisions. These scouts are doing this all year long, scouting these players, year after year, month after month. And so we'll see what happens come draft day. Then finally here, Rob Domofsky on Jair participating in the offseason program. He's excited to get back at it. I think our team was, not just him. It's week 1. We've had 4 days. Said guys wanted to be together since the season ended. Quote, got a long way to go, but he seems to be in a great space right now, which is another quote we already read. But I do think that this Packers team built a ton of camaraderie last season. Being a young team, being overlooked, being doubted by, I think, lots of people around the NFL. They really put some nice things together come the end of the season in the playoffs to make it as far as they did. And I think that these guys, there's a great team culture here, especially with Jordan Love leading the charge, which is really nice to see. And it sounds like they're ready to come back together and put together another great season coming into 2024. But that's going to be it for this video. If you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys next time.